they talk about Jeffrey Epstein's lawyer. This guy's name is Alan Dershowitz. Alan Dershowitz is one of the most renowned criminal defense lawyers in the country, if not the world. Very, very reputable, very, very good at what he does, works on a lot of high-level cases. And there were allegations in the actual documentary that he, the defense lawyer, was a part of this entire ring. So that Alan Dershowitz was actually sleeping with some of these victims, and he was involved in Jeffrey Epstein's entire ring, right? So this is a guy who's a very reputable, he's been doing it a long time. I believe him, in the things that he says, because he's been doing it for so long and he's got really no ulterior motive. But very serious allegations. So when I was watching the documentary and they're like, Alan slept with me like 6, 7 times. Whoa, that is a big claim, because this guy is a legal powerhouse, and you can't just make those types of claims without any other evidence or any backing. And so when Ghislaine, so Alan Dershowitz, for ever since this documentary came out, has kind of been getting a lot of flack for this, right? People are watching it and they're believing it, even though there's a lot of evidence to the contrary, which I'm going to share with you in a minute. But he's been under a lot of fire for this, and he's even claimed that he's going to be suing Netflix and a lot of these victims who are claiming that he was part of this for things like defamation. And he may have a pretty good claim on some of those things. But when Ghislaine was arrested, he wrote a letter that kind of flips that entire documentary on its head. So when you watch the documentary, you're going to see that it is very, very, very one-sided, as it should be, right? I mean, it's a documentary about how kind of disgusting this whole thing was, and how terrible of a person this guy was, and how much damage he caused. But there is some area that I think if you're not truthful, it undermines the entire series, and they did that with this Alan Dershowitz piece, in my opinion. So they kind of skewer him a little bit. He says, when he goes on camera and he says specifically, if there's evidence, prove it. I'm open to discussing it on the show, and he's very forceful in his denial of ever sleeping or ever being involved in anything that Jeffrey Epstein was doing. They air it, and they continue on with the series. They don't pay him much mind. So then Ghislaine gets arrested, and Alan, he fires off a pretty good letter, actually. He goes through and he details why this is such a problematic case. And so let's dive into his statement. Like every other arrested person, she must be presumed innocent, is what he says. Now, this is a picture from the documentary itself. If you haven't checked it out on Netflix and you're interested in Jeffrey Epstein, you can go check it out. A lot of sad stuff that takes place there, a lot of interesting things, but it's worth a watch. But it is definitely taking a position. So just watch it through that lens, and I think you'll be okay. So here's what he says about it, right? He never saw her do anything inappropriate. He only knew her as Jeffrey Epstein's 30-something-year-old girlfriend, or 30-something girlfriend. Don't believe the Netflix-based accounts. Don't believe Netflix based on accounts of 2 women with histories of making dubious accusations. So there are these 2 women. One, her name is Virginia. The other one's name is Sarah. Sarah Roberts admits she was pressured to falsely accuse Dershowitz by her lawyers. And then Sarah claimed to have sex tapes on Hillary Clinton and Donald Trump. And then she admitted to inventing the story. So the documentary, it brings these women in who seem to be very credible. They don't talk about any of these other things, about admitting that they lied about it, or about making up stories about sex tapes for Donald Trump or Hillary Clinton. So we're dealing with some people in the documentary who are not the most credible of witnesses. They've got some problems with their testimony and with the things that they're claiming happened. And so basically that's what Alan Dershowitz is saying. He's saying, look, keep an open mind until after a full trial. He brings up some other pretty good arguments too. So remember what I said. This whole story is over 20 years old. It's very old. So there are things called a statute of limitations, which means that if you don't bring a criminal charge soon enough, you lose the right to do that. So in other words, you can't get a DUI and then have charges filed for that DUI 20 years from now. It's too far. In Arizona, the rule is they got to bring that within 1 year. If you get stopped for a DUI, those charges have to be filed, and your case needs to get moving within 12 months. They can't wait longer than that. If they do, they lose it. The government has to have the incentive to bring charges and bring them quickly, because as I said, justice delayed is justice denied. You need to have your day in court. Well, in Ghislaine's case, The case is 20-something years old. So what is the statute of limitations? Is there an argument maybe that the case should be thrown out because they didn't bring it soon enough? It's too old. That would apply, of course, to the sex charges, not to the perjury charges, but that sounds like it's going to be an argument that Alan Dershowitz is going to be making. Also, if you don't recall, Jeffrey Epstein got a sweetheart deal a while ago. I think it was back during the Obama administration. There was a deal between a U.S. district attorney and for these charges that I already mentioned previously on this show, where Jeffrey Epstein got a very, very sweetheart deal. So he gets that deal. In that plea deal, there was an immunity clause essentially saying that this resolves everything. This one deal solves everything. You can't bring any other charges against me. You can't go after any of my assets. You can't bring new claims. You can't even investigate anybody who was involved with me. And Ghislaine Maxwell is on that list. So is she going to be granted immunity pursuant to that original plea deal? That's very likely something else that he is going to be bringing up in his defense, in his representation.